Hello, all. I just wanted to give a few thoughts about COVID 19. I know a lot of people are worried, and I think a lot of that is because certain things in the media or on social media that are being said that aren't really based in facts. And because of that, I want to show some actual statistics that we have of what the virus is actually doing. Also, I want to say this viruses, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I do know this. Viruses run their course. That's what they do. Whether it's in a society or in an individual, it's all the same. It runs its course. It comes in, it does its thing, and then it goes away. And that's just how it works. So uh, the course that it has, I think, is about 2 or 3 months is how long COVID-19. And I'll show you some statistics that support that. But I'm on a website that just has some graphs and is showing some of the data. So right now in worldwide, we've got about 500,000 infected people and about 24,000 deaths. Now, all those deaths are tragic. In this video, though, I'm just looking at statistics from looking at the numbers from a statistical standpoint. Let's look at the U.S. And this is what people are seeing right now. And if you look at this at face value, it's kind of terrifying. So here we've got all the states. Down below, we've got total cases. Now, as you can see, we're just plugging along, not very many cases, and then boom, this thing starts growing exponentially. And so the question is, what's going to happen in the future? And if you're worried about COVID-19, this is probably one of the things that's worrying about you. Because the question is, you can do the math. If the question is, if this trend continues, what is it going to look like in the future? Well, if this trend continues, March 26, if we went out here to like July, and this trend continues, we're going to be up to 150 million infected people, 500 million. I don't know. It's hard to calculate exactly where this would be because exponential growth is hard to calculate in the human brain. But obviously, that's terrifying, right? And I think that's got a lot of people scared right now. And they're also worried, if it does happen where this goes for 18 months or whatever, is it going to crash our economy? Is there going to be food for me and my family to eat? And I'm telling you, it's going to be fine. Let's look at this a little deeper. The first thing is this graph of total cases isn't the best graph to look at if you really want to know what's going on. The best graph to look at would be a distribution graph that shows the daily new cases. However, daily new cases isn't perfect. The problem with daily new cases is that, as we all know, testing kits are in super short supply. And so this isn't really daily new cases. What it actually is daily new confirmed cases, which means that there could have been a ton more people who had it over here that we didn't know about because they weren't tested. And these numbers may or may not be accurate. Also, this number could be growing more exponentially than is actually the case, not because more people are getting it, but because test kits are becoming more available and they're testing more people. And so daily new cases isn't the ideal graph. The best graph, in my opinion, is daily deaths. The reason this graph is best is because if somebody dies because of COVID-19, if they die because of a respiratory disease, they're going to be tested right now. And so it's unlikely that somebody dies because of COVID-19 and is not counted. So you can see here, again, this is terrifying because if this trend continues and we go out here to July, the question is, how long will it continue? The reality is this: exponential growth cannot continue forever. It's just mathematically impossible. So it cannot continue growing exponentially for 7 months. It simply will burn itself out too quickly. And that's why, as I said before, viruses run their course. They come in, and that's what happens in your body. That virus gets in there and it grows exponentially, but that exponential growth doesn't continue forever. So this is just the US. Let's look at other countries and see what's happening there. So let's go back up. We'll go into countries, and then we're going to look first at China. Now, a lot of people are saying, I don't trust the numbers in China, and I get that. I do too. I think China, the Chinese Communist Party, is the most evil organization, shady, liars, they're terrible. But I think that the general and the data in its totality will tell a story. So this is daily new cases. This is why a lot of people don't trust it, is because There's one day where the Chinese government reported 14,000 cases, and then the next day, all of a sudden, they had like 1/3 as many cases, and it just tapered off. And so a lot of people are like, we think China kept going, and they're just hiding it. I don't fault you for thinking that if that's the case. Um, let's look at their daily deaths. Same thing, their distribution grew exponentially, and then it tapered off and it ran its course. In my opinion, I think that China is probably lying about their numbers, and they're suppressing them a little bit. However, I don't think that China is lying about the overall situation, that the disease is running its course. But let's say we don't. I mean, that's what the data of what they've reported says. But I understand if you don't think that. So let's look at other countries to see what's happening there. Italy, by the way, Italy just has this terrifying death rate. Their total deaths are 8,000. They've had basically the same amount of cases as us. They've lost almost 7 times as many people. If you look here, for every 1 million people, we had 4 deaths. They've had 136. It's terrifying, right? People are worrying about that happen here. Here's the thing. Italy, the average age in Italy is like 15 years older than the US, meaning the population there is just really old. They've got a ton of old people. And this disease, this respiratory disease, as we all know, attacks older people. And so that's why, even with the same amount of cases, it's been far more lethal to them, which obviously hearts and prayers go out to Italy. It's terrible, but let's look at the data. So total cases, like I said, this graph's not very useful. But here, in total new cases, this distribution chart, so it starts to grow exponentially, but then as I said, it cannot grow exponentially forever, and it starts to taper off. And so, as you can see, they're going through the same bell curve that China is reporting. And I think we all agree that Italy is reporting accurately. So look at the total deaths. Same story. So it started, went for about a month, and then it tapered off. So their deaths are starting to drop down. And that's happening here. Let's go back to the countries, and we're going to look at some other countries. Spain, so they've had, Spain, it jumped right as I clicked it. There we go. Let's look at Spain, 57,000 total cases. Look at their distribution, starting to go up. Daily new cases, they're in that same range, but look, it's starting to taper off about a month later. So it's no longer growing as exponentially as it was here. It's starting to taper off a little bit. Same results as what we were getting with Italy. Let's look at Germany. Again, Germany, all these countries, we have no doubt they're reporting accurately. Let's look at the distribution. Grew exponentially for about a month, and then it tapered off. I mean, you've got this day, which is a bit of an outlier, but generally it's going up, and then it kind of tapers off after about a month. Iran, I don't know if I really trust Iran, but let's see what they're saying. Their bell curve is daily new cases is they didn't have the exponential growth. Deaths, same thing, it goes up, and look at that. Same thing that every other one is doing, that's tapering off. Let's look at France. France will report accurately. Obviously, they're allies, and daily new cases went up. It's kind of flatlined here, dropped down a little bit and back up. Let's look at daily deaths. Again, that's probably the most accurate. So they're a little bit ahead of, like, they got a little bit later, and so they're kind of early on in that, but it's looking like it's going to trend the same way as the rest of them. Switzerland, they don't have, I'm just going down the case or down the list here. We may start doing these a little more randomly. Same thing. It goes up, drops back down. Goes up, drops back down. South Korea, their curve was a little more flat right there, but same thing, went up, and then the virus is naturally just killing itself off. I mean, it runs its course. Daily deaths is they had a really flat curve, which is great for them. And you can go through these if you want. It's called worldmeters.info. It's a really cool website. It shows a bunch of information. Canada, you can go through all of these and look, and you'll find very similar trends. The UK, obviously, solid allies. They're going to report accurately. They're pretty early in the curve, so they got kind of a flatter curve. But I think the one thing that we'll probably see in the US that's a little different than the rest of them is that we're so big and we're divided by a bunch of states. And so the United States is more like the whole European Union. It's about the same size, and oops, something just happened there. It's about the same size as the European Union, and it's got a bunch of little states, just like the European Union has a whole bunch of member states. And so, because of that, I think that the United States is probably going to have a little bit of a bigger curve. If you looked at any state, I think probably have about a 2-month curve. But for all the for the country, for the United States generally, I think that it's going to have a little bit of a longer curve. I'm trying to think if it has the distribution on this. It may not have. I was looking to see if it has a distribution for the world as a whole, but it doesn't. Now, with that said, you've got the various states, and they're trying to counter it, which I don't blame the states for implementing measures. Obviously, we want to save life where we can. But I think that what you're going to probably see is the states that have had it first will run their course. The bigger states that are more compact, they'll run their 2 or 3 month course. It'll burn itself out. And what will happen in the long term is the human race will they will develop a vaccine for this. The other good news about the coronavirus is it's not mutating very much. And so once they develop a vaccine, we'll know that that vaccine is going to be effective because unlike the flu, it's not mutating nearly as fast as the other ones. At least that's the preliminary information that we're getting. So that's good. This will run its course. Life will go on. There'll be a new day tomorrow, and there will be a good economy at some point down the road. And this is just life, like these ups and downs. That's just how life is, and that's how economies work, and that's how they function. And you got to be able to roll with the bad times as well as the good. But I'm super optimistic and hopeful for the future. I think that March is over, but I think April is going to be similar to what we've got going. I don't think that any of the orders are going to be repealed. So I think that we're going to see a certain amount of quarantine for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then even if it gets less, it won't completely go away in April. May maybe a little bit, but we're going to continue to grow and do well, and life is going to be good. So let's keep on keeping on.